My name is Aquila of the Mentor Legion, and I am drowning in a god. The world was Okeanos, a festering pearl of water and madness in the segmentum obscurus. Our strike cruiser, Ignes of Reason, had translated from the warp into a silent system. No orbital hails, no astropathic chatter, only the dull, greenish gleam of the world below, swirled with cloud, cover that should not have been there. The augurs spoke of impossible weather patterns, of a single continent, spanning ocean with no discernible currents, merely a vast, sluggish churn. The Ordo Xenos had attached me to Captain Varus's company of Novamarines as an observer, a liaison for tactical data. I was to watch, to learn, to transmit. I was not supposed to bear witness to blasphemy. "The Auspex is blind, Captain," I reported, my voice a synthetic rasp through my helmet's vox grill. I stood on the bridge, my grey power armor feeling insubstantial against the psychic pressure that was already, subtly, pressing against the ship's Jella field. Atmospheric interference is total. It reads as a solid wall of empiric resonance. Captain Varus, his blue and white plate scarred from 100 battlefields, did not turn from the oculus, a wall, or a shroud. His voice was gravel grinding on bone. The distress call claimed what? Xenos incursion. The initial burst, 12 cycles ago, was fragmentary. It spoke of the sea rising and the old blood. Then silence, poetry. Varus grunted. "I despise poetry. It is always a prelude to heresy. Prepare the Thunderhawks, full battle. Plate, we are diving into this murk." The descent was a trial of faith. The ship bucked and screamed as we hit the upper atmosphere, not like piercing a sky, but like plunging into a viscous fluid. Lightning, the color of bruised flesh, crawled across the viewports. The static in my vox was not mere interference. It was a whisper, a sibilant, wet sound that seemed to coil in the ear. "Come home." We broke through the cloud layer, and I saw the god. Okeanos was not a world. It was a being, a single planet-wide ocean, its water a thick, milky green, like curdled jade. There were no waves, not as the Munitorum manuals define them. Instead, the surface was a topography of slow, breathing swells, of vast, membranous stretches that pulsed with a sickening internal rhythm. Here and there, jagged spines of black rock, the bones of the world, pierced the surface, weeping a thick, saline slime. The sky was a perpetual twilight, the sun a bleary cataract, white eye smeared behind the clouds. Emperor's throne, breathed brother, Sergeant Cashin over the squad, Vox, our Thunderhawk, Fury's edge, skimmed low over the surface. The water was not transparent. It was opaque, depthless. As we passed, shapes moved beneath the surface. Not the shapes of fish or leviathans, but vast, indistinct things. Continents of flesh slowly turning in the deep. One of them, directly below us, opened a single, cyclopean eye the size of a hive. City spire. It was an eye of pure, malevolent intelligence, and it looked not at our gunship, but threw it into me. I felt a coldness in my soul that had nothing to do with the void. Sensor contact. The pilot's voice crackled, the source of the distress call, an Adeptus Mechanicus research station on one of the larger rock formations. It was less a station and more a fortress clinging to the side of a fang of obsidian that clawed at the sky. The Archmagos in charge had evidently feared the sea, for the walls were high and thick, studded with missile batteries and heavy bolter emplacements. But they had not feared what came from within. The main gates were burst inward, not by explosives, but by a tremendous, gelatinous pressure. The metal was rusted, not with age, but with a creeping orange, bronze patina that looked like a fungal growth. We sat down on a landing platform slick with the same damp, salty residue that coated everything. The air was thick, humid, and carried a smell I can only describe as ancient. The smell of a tomb that has been flooded for millennia, of things that have been sleeping in the dark. "Brother Aquila with me," Varus commanded. "Cashin, secure the perimeter. Nothing gets on this platform." The interior of the station was a charnel house. The crew, priests, servitors, skitari, had not been killed. They had been transformed. Their bodies were fused with the very structure of the station, their flesh flowing into the metal like wax, their mouths open in silent screams. Wires and cables sprouted from their eye sockets. Their limbs were elongated and twisted into support struts. One Skitarius was half merged with a wall, his galvanic rifle still held in a hand that had become a part of the plasteel, his single remaining eye tracking us with a pathetic, desperate light. "The Omnissiah preserve us," I whispered, the litany feeling hollow. "He is not here," Varus said, his stormbolter held ready. "Only the enemy is here. Record this, Mentor. Record it all." We pushed deeper into the heart of the station, a central chamber that had been the main reactor room. The reactor itself was cold and dead, but in its place something else had grown, a vast, pulsating organ of translucent, veined flesh, from which throbbing, root-like tendrils spread out through the floor and walls. It glowed with a soft, internal bioluminescence, and at its core, suspended in the jello-like substance, was the body of the Archmagos, his mechadend rights now organic nerves, his face a mask of ecstatic agony. And standing before this abomination was a figure I recognized from the briefing picts, Inquisitor Valerius of the Ordo Xenos. He was not fighting it, he was studying it, a complex scanner in one hand. He turned as we entered, his face pale but resolute within his powered armor's helmet. "Captain Varus," he said, his voice tight, "you are a welcome sight, though I fear you have come to a drowning world." "Inquisitor, explain this," Varus demanded, his weapon not wavering from the central organ. "This is not a Xenos incursion, Captain. This is an awakening." Valerius gestured around him. "The Ordo has long had theories about this world. It is not merely a world with an ocean. It is the ocean, a single, planet-sized entity, a primordial. The ancient cartographs named it Okeanos. A god, I asked, the word tasting like ash. "A titan of the old night," Valerius corrected. "A being from a time before the warp was as we know it, before chaos itself took its current forms. It is not of the Empyrean, not truly. It is older, a creature of the material universe, but one so vast, so alien, that its very presence warps reality. It slept for eons. Something has woken it." The distress call mentioned the old blood. I said. Valerius nodded grimly. "A translation. The Magos here was a xenobiologist of some renown. He believed he could tap into the primordial's bioelectric field, its fresh water, as the ancients called its life force. He thought to use it as a power source, a weapon. He drilled too deep. He struck not water, but a vein, and the old blood. It bled." As he spoke, the fleshy reactor, core pulsed, and a wave of psychic force washed over us. It was not the corrupting filth of chaos. It was colder, more immense. It was the pressure of the deep ocean, the indifference of a leviathan. My armor's systems flickered. Varus staggered, his boots grinding on the slimy floor, and then the walls wept. The dampness coalesced, forming humanoid shapes that pulled themselves from the metal and rock. They were not quite solid, composed of the same milky, greenish water. They had the rough forms of men, but with horns of coral and tails of swirling fluid. Their eyes were pits of black, abyssal pressure. The Potamoi, the river, gods, the children of the waking Titan. They are the antibodies of this world's immune system. Valerius shouted, drawing his inferno pistol. They will cleanse the infection. And we are the infection. The battle was joined. Storm bolters roared, filling the chamber with deafening thunder and the smell of cordite. The shells tore through the water-formed bodies, which burst apart in great gouts of liquid. But they did not die. The water simply pooled, swirled, and reformed, often with new, more monstrous aspects. Claws of sharpened shell, maws filled with needle, teeth. I fired my own bolt pistol, my mind a whirlwind of tactical analysis, high regenerative capacity, kinetic energy less effective, susceptible to heat, captain, plasma, and flame. Varus was already bellowing the order. Brother Goran, purge them. The Novamarine bearing the heavy flamer stepped forward, a giant in blue and white. A torrent of promethium fire erupted, washing over the advancing water creatures. They screamed, a sound like steam venting from a geyser, and this time they did not reform. They evaporated, leaving behind only a scorched stain and the smell of boiling salt. But for every one we burned, two more pulled themselves from the weeping walls. We were a rock in a rising tide, being slowly worn away. We cannot hold here. Cashin voxed from the perimeter. The sea is rising on the landing platform. We are being pushed back. Inquisitor, Varus roared, crushing a water form with his power fist. Is there a way to put this thing back to sleep? Valerius was fending off a creature with a crackling power blade. The Magos' folly was the catalyst, but the awakening is now self-sustaining. Okeanos is dreaming, and its dream is becoming reality. We must find the heart, the font, the source of its consciousness. Where? The legends speak of a throne at the bottom of the encircling river, a place where the heavenly bodies rise and set. It is allegory, but all allegory has a root in truth. The deepest point on this world, the planetary core. To reach the core of a living god, the insanity of it was breathtaking. Our retreat to the Thunderhawk was a running battle through corridors that were no longer metal, but were becoming cartilage and bone. The station was being subsumed, digested. We barely made it to the Fury's edge as the landing platform cracked and collapsed into the hungry sea below. Back in the relative safety of the gunship, soaring over the heaving, living ocean, we took stock. We had lost 3 Novamarines, their bodies swallowed by the sea before we could recover them. A terrible loss. The core, Varus mused, studying the augur returns, which were little more than chaotic swirls of energy. How do we reach it? The Magos' logs, I said, pulling data from the recordings I had made. He spoke of conduits, subterranean aquifers that Tethys, the consort, uses to distribute its waters. I believe he was referring to a network of geological faults, volcanic vents that lead deep into the planetary crust. They would be capillaries. Veins. Find me a vein large enough to swim down, Aquila, Varus ordered. It was Inquisitor Valerius who found it. Here, he said, pointing to a massive, whirling vortex in the ocean below. It was hundreds of kilometers across, a spiraling maelstrom that descended into utter blackness. From its center, a faint, throbbing, green light emanated. The navel of the world, the mouth of the river. It is both an entrance and an exit. Pilot, Varus commanded, take us in. The descent into the vortex was a descent into madness. The Fury's edge was tossed like a leaf, its engines screaming in protest. The walls of the maelstrom were not water, but solid, rotating walls of flesh and ancient rock, carved with spiraling patterns that hurt the mind to look upon. Strange, phosphorescent life forms, the Okeanides, the nymphs of this terrible place, swam alongside us, their faces beautiful and utterly empty, their song a psychic lure that promised peaceful oblivion in the depths. We flew what felt like hours down this throat of the world. The pressure on the hull was immense, and the psychic presence was now a physical weight, pressing in on our souls. I focused on my duty, on the data streams, on the steady, grim faith of the Novamarines around me. It was all that kept me sane. Finally, the vortex opened up. We emerged into a cavern so vast it defied comprehension. This was no geological formation. This was a body cavity. The sky above was the underside of the world's crust, from which hung colossal stalactite-like organs that pulsed with slow, rhythmic contractions. Below us was not a sea, but a single, planet-wide lake of glowing, green energy, the primordial's life, blood, its fresh, water font. The air hummed with immense, ancient power. This was the heart of Okeanos, the river of souls itself, and in the center of that glowing lake, on an island of smooth black stone, was a throne, and on that throne sat the god. Okeanos was immense, a figure to dwarf titans. His lower body was that of a colossal serpent, coiled miles upon miles around the island throne, its scales the color of abyssal trench mud. His upper torso was that of an impossibly muscular, ancient man, skin the texture of weathered coral. From his brow curled horns like those of a great, primeval bull, but made of a substance that was both horn and stone. In one hand, he held a trident that crackled with the energy of storms. The other rested on the arm of his throne, a fish and a serpent entwined around his wrist. His eyes were closed. He was dreaming, and his dream was the horror above. We could see it now, projected in the glowing atmosphere of the cavern. The distorted reality of the surface, the melting station, the rising Potamoi. He was turning his own body into his dreamt reality. There, Varus said, his voice a whisper of pure awe and defiance, the source. But we were not alone. The children of the god were here in their true forms. The Potamoi were not mere water elementals here. They were giants, each a unique confluence of river and rock and myth, bearing weapons of obsidian and coral, and with them were their sisters, the Okeanides, swirling around their father's head like a galaxy of mournful stars. And standing before the throne, a figure of shadow and spite, was something else, a being of pure chaos, a herald of Tzeentch, its form shifting kaleidoscope of feathers and eyes and impossible angles. It was chanting, its discordant voice a needle in the mind, weaving strands of corrupting war energy around the dreaming form of Okeanos. The catalyst. Valerius hissed. The Magos' drill did not just draw blood. It created a wound, a gateway for that thing. It is poisoning the dream, twisting the awakening into a service of the changer of ways. The plan formed in the space of a heartbeat. It was suicide, but it was the only path. The herald must die, Varus stated. It is the infection. We cut it out, and the primordial's own nature may reassert itself. It may return to sleep, or it may simply dream a different, equally terrible dream. I countered. It is a chance we must take, brother. Aquila, we will draw the attention of the children. You, Inquisitor, and I will make for the throne. We will slay the herald. The Thunderhawk plunged towards the island throne. The moment we broke the plain of the glowing lake, the children of Okeanos turned as one. The battle that followed was a mythic tableau, a clash of legends. Novamarines in their ceramite shells fought against river gods of primordial might. Flamers and plasma casters seared through forms of water and stone. Brother fought and died, his body crushed by a trident blow from a Potamoi that resembled the Ganges of ancient Terra. Another was dragged into the glowing blood lake by a chorus of Okeanides. His final vox burst a gurgle of static. Varus, Valerius, and I broke through the line, leaping from the hovering Thunderhawk onto the black stone of the island. The Herald of Tzeentch turned from its ritual, its multitude of faces forming a single, mocking smile. Little mortals, it chirruped, its voice, the sound of 1,000 dying birds. You swim in a god's veins and think you are surgeons. You are but platelets, soon to be crushed. It unleashed a bolt of raw, polymorphic warp, fire. Varus met it with his storm shield, the energy screeching and boiling against the adamantium. He was driven back, his boots scraping grooves in the stone. For the Emperor and the Primarch, he bellowed and charged. I provided covering fire, my bolt pistol rounds doing little more than annoy the creature, popping eyes and tearing feathers. Valerius circled, his inferno pistol searing a line of fire across the herald's back. The battle was a blur of light and sound and terror. Herald was fast, its form shifting, striking with claws of crystal and beams of forgetting. Varus was a master warrior, his power fist crashing again and again into the demon's form, each blow landing with the sound of shattering glass. But the herald was a creature of deceit. It feigned a lunge, and as Varus committed to a parry, it unraveled a portion of its being into a cloud of psychic mist that enveloped the captain. I saw him stagger, his movements becoming jerky, confused. He was fighting phantoms only he could see. His mind. It's attacking his mind, Valerius shouted. I had no out grenades, no force weapon. I had only data and a purpose. I charged, not at the herald, but towards the captain. I slammed into him, my armored bulk knocking him sideways, breaking the demon's direct psychic hold. It was the opening the herald needed. It reformed a talon of pure warp, stuff forming and lancing towards my exposed back. Varus, his senses clearing, saw it. With a roar of pure, selfless fury, he shoved me aside and took the blow himself. The talon punched through his chest plate, erupting from his back in a shower of blood. Ceramite, he gasped, his eyes wide with shock. Then, with grim acceptance, finish it, mentor. He choked, blood flecking his lips. Record this victory. The herald cackled, withdrawing its talon, letting the captain fall. It turned its attention to Valerius and me. A noble sacrifice. A beautiful change from life to death. I shall treasure it. In that moment, something broke in me. The cold, analytical part of my mind was washed away by a tide of hot, human rage. This was not data. This was my battle, brother. This was my captain. This was the Imperium's finest. struck down by a thing of utter foulness. I screamed, a raw, unfiltered sound of hate, and fired my bolt pistol until the clip was empty. I drew my chainsword, the teeth screaming their own mechanical fury, and charged. For Varus, for the Novamarines, for the Emperor. I was not a hero, I was a chronicler, but in that moment I became the story. The herald, amused by my desperation, batted me aside with a casual sweep of its arm. I felt ribs crack inside my armor. I landed hard, my helmet cracking against the stone, my vision swimming through a haze of pain. I saw Valerius make his move. While the herald was distracted with me, he had closed the distance. His power blade flashed, not at the herald's core, but at the strands of war energy it had woven around the throne, around the dreaming Okeanos. The connection. He yelled, "Sever the connection." He cut through 1, 2, 3 of the glowing ethereal threads. The herald shrieked in genuine alarm. No, the design, the great work. It turned from me, its form contorting in rage, and unleashed a blast of energy that caught Valerius full in the chest. His inquisitorial rosette vaporized, his armor melted, and he was thrown back, a smoldering ruin, into the glowing lake, where he sank without a trace. I was alone, wounded. My captain and the Inquisitor were dead. The herald, wounded but still powerful, turned back to its ritual, desperately trying to reweave the strands Valerius had cut. And then I felt it, a presence, vast, ancient, curious. The pressure in the cavern shifted. The glowing blood lake grew still. Fighting between the Novamarines and the Potamoi slowed, then ceased, as if frozen in time. The eyes of Okeanos opened. They were not the eyes of a demon, nor of a man. They were the color of the deep ocean, holding the light of forgotten stars. They looked down, past the insignificant herald, past the battling children, and they settled on me. A voice filled the cavern, not a sound, but a concept impressed directly upon my soul. It was the voice of the abyss, the whisper of the continental drift, the memory of the first rain. You are not of the changer. You are not of the corpse, God. You bear the weight of knowledge. You swim in my blood and record my dream. Why, I could not speak. My vox was dead. I could only think my answer, pouring my will into the mental connection. You are drowning our reality. You are killing my brothers. We came to stop you. I do not drown. I dream. The small thing of flux sought to direct the dream, to make me a weapon in its war. It has been excised as it spoke, the Herald of Tzeentch, which had been frantically trying to complete its ritual, simply dissolved. It didn't scream, it unwrote itself, its essence flowing apart. Like ink in water, absorbed into the immense, neutral presence of the primordial. You and your kin are a fever, a brief inflammation. Your pain is the pain of a body adjusting to a new state. It will pass. You will return to sleep. I thought, desperate. Sleep is a mortal concept. I will turn my attention inward. The dream will recede. The small lives on my skin will find a new equilibrium. It is of no consequence. The indifference in that thought was more terrifying than any chaos god's malice. We were bacteria. Our struggles, our sacrifices, were merely a fluctuation in its metabolism. The immense eyes began to close. The projection of the surface world flickered and faded. The Potamoi and Okeanides, their purpose served, melted back into the lake and the air. The awakening was ending. I crawled to Captain Varus's body. He was gone, his face peaceful in death. Around the cavern, the few remaining Novamarines stood, looking at each other, their weapons lowering. The battle was over, not won, but concluded. A single, surviving Okeanid, a being of stunning alien beauty, drifted down to me. In her hands, she held a simple, smooth stone, black as the throne. She offered it. To me, I took it. As my fingers closed around it, a final thought from Okeanos flowed into me. You recorded the dream. Take this record, a memory of the deep, a warning. The universe is old, and there are things in the deep that do not care for your gods or your empires. You have seen one, remember. Then the presence was gone. The cavern was just a cavern, the lake just a lake of glowing liquid. The god had turned its gaze away. The Thunderhawk retrieved us. We recovered the bodies of our fallen, including Captain Varus. We broke through the surface into a world that was calming. The sea was still a strange, milky green, but the pulsing, living quality was fading. The sky was clearing. The station was gone, completely subsumed. We returned to the Ignis of reason. I stood on the bridge once more, watching Okeanos recede in the Oculus. It looked like a world again, just a world. In my hand, I clutched the black stone. It was cold and smooth. My mission was a success. I had observed. I had recorded. I had terabytes of data on a Primordial Titan, on its biology, its capabilities, its defeat of a greater demon. It was a treasure trove for the Ordo Xenos, but I would not transmit it, not all of it. I looked at the stone, a memory of the deep, a warning. The universe is old, and we are not its masters. We are but a fever dream on the skin of gods who have not yet noticed we are here. And I, Aquila of the Mentor Legion, must carry that terrible, silent knowledge with me, forever, drowning in the memory of the god that is the sea.